Have you ever wondered why, in an age where information is abundant, wisdom seems to be dying out? Why is noise confused with authority, and virality celebrated more than virtue? We are living in a disturbing paradox. The more data we accumulate, the further we stray from discernment. The modern world has not only forgotten wisdom, it has learned to ridicule it. And that is not only sad, it is dangerous. We live in a world where those who shout the loudest are heard, no matter how empty their speech. Where depth is dismissed as slowness, where doubt is seen as weakness and reflection as a waste of time. In a system that rewards immediacy, thinking has become an act of resistance, feeling deeply, a threat. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned, when we can no longer distinguish truth from illusion, decadence sets in. We are at that point. And worse, we think it's normal. Today's culture has elevated superficiality to the status of a virtue. We celebrate those who generate instant impact, not those who offer lasting clarity. Wisdom requires silence, time, listening. But haste has no time to listen. Anxiety cannot bear the emptiness between words. We prefer a noisy opinion to a silent truth. We prefer memes to meditation. And in doing so, we lose more than our critical sense. We lose the ability to recognize ourselves. We have never been so informed and at the same time so disoriented. The amount of content we consume does not translate into awareness. On the contrary, it turns into noise, into distraction, into numbness. Psychologist Carl Jung said that thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. But today we don't even judge with discernment. We react, we cancel, we share without knowing. We are guided by impulses, not principles. And all of this is no accident. It is engineering. Algorithms are designed to provoke anger, not reflection. Platforms prioritize shock, not meaning. Education prepares us to obey, not to question. Leaders who should inspire complexity become caricatures of empty certainties. And we, often without realizing it, begin to repeat this pattern. Talking to be seen, not to build. Consuming to numb ourselves, not to understand. The most tragic thing is that we have come to believe that this is the only way. That living fast, distracted, and shallow is the price of being in the world. But it is not. This is only the consequence of having strayed from the most important question. Why am I living like this? When we stop seeking this answer, we stop living. We start to survive. We react, we run, we fight, but we rarely stop. And stopping, today, is the beginning of the revolution. Stopping to think, to feel, to listen to what the noise tries to silence. Wisdom has not disappeared. It has only retreated. It has withdrawn into unread books, into the deep conversations we no longer have, into the moments of solitude that are now feared. It is hidden between the lines. But it waits. And it remains accessible to those who dare to remember. Dare to remember that thinking is dangerous only to those who profit from your distraction. This video is an invitation, a reminder, a crack. Not just for you to listen, but to see yourself. To begin to recover, gesture by gesture, what haste has taken from you. Because if stupidity is being glorified, then wisdom must be chosen. Not as an idea, but as a practice, as a direction in life. And you've already started. By being here, by staying until this point, by feeling this lucid discomfort, you are rescuing something. And that's all wisdom needs, a beginning. The world may glorify ignorance, but you can still choose consciousness. You can be the exception. You can be the difference. Modern education does not teach you to think. It teaches you to repeat. It teaches you to obey. It teaches you to compete for a place in a system that values productivity over depth. The result of this is not only intellectual collapse, but a silent erosion of the spirit. We live surrounded by schools that measure intelligence and multiple choice, universities that reward speed of response rather than depth of questioning, and a market that turns human beings into replaceable cogs in a meaningless machine. Thinking today is a subversive act. Think about it. Who profits when you stop thinking? Who benefits when you live anesthetized, surrounded by stimuli that accelerate everything except your consciousness? Noam Chomsky already warned that the most intelligent way to keep a population submissive is to allow heated debate only within imposed limits, pretending freedom where there is only manipulation. They give you the feeling of choice, but all options serve the same interests. They feed chaos to stifle questioning. In this scenario, wisdom has not died, but it has been pushed underground. It survives between the lines, in dusty books that no one reads anymore, in conversations that stray from the script of the day, in moments of silence that most people fear to face. Wisdom is a dormant seed, buried under layers of noise, distraction, and haste. But it is alive, and it pulses inside you, if you have the courage to look within. The ancient world understood this. The Greeks taught philosophy in the squares. The Romans wrote meditations in the midst of war. The Chinese sought harmony between heaven and earth. In those times, wisdom was the foundation of culture, not a luxury, but a necessity. A people without wisdom was a vulnerable people. But today we live the opposite. We trade depth for performance. We trade reflection for reaction. We trade meaning for engagement metrics. And it was no accident. The attention economy has become the new religion. Your focus is worth money. Your distraction is a product. Every click you make on something stupid is a silent vote against thinking. Platforms are designed to hijack your nervous system, pushing you further and further away from yourself. News has been converted into emotional triggers, schools into grade factories, books into aesthetic props. In this environment, wisdom has become a burden because it is not immediate. It does not offer easy certainties. It requires pause, doubt, complexity. And in a world addicted to speed, anything that slows down the pace is seen as a delay. But that is exactly where healing begins. Because wisdom is not a set of answers, but a new way of asking questions. It does not seek control, but awareness. And those who awaken to this become free. Free from the tyranny of urgency. Free from the manipulation of the obvious. Look at politics. The leaders who grow the most are those who simplify the world to the extreme. They reduce dilemmas to slogans. They promise quick solutions to age-old problems. And they are applauded for it. Because thinking is tiring. Thinking hurts. Thinking requires courage to face what has no answer. But while society rewards noise, wisdom remains invisible. And those who choose this path must learn to walk against the grain. But there is a force that cannot be nullified. It dwells in the few who still stop to feel, who still cry over a book, who still get goosebumps over an idea, who still fall silent in the face of mystery. These people have not surrendered. They are rare, but they exist. And they are finding each other. They are quietly rebuilding a new world within this one. Because if stupidity screams, wisdom whispers, and it takes courage to listen to what does not seek applause. We live surrounded by data, but hungry for meaning, drowned in stimuli, but dehydrated from reflection, connected all the time, but increasingly lost from ourselves. And the most serious thing is that many no longer perceive the absence of wisdom. It is not missed because it has been replaced. And what takes its place is disguised as entertainment, wrapped in irony, sold as lightness. When stupidity becomes funny, it becomes acceptable. And when it is accepted, it becomes invisible. This is where the real crisis begins, when the emptiness no longer bothers us. Ask yourself honestly, how often do you consume something that challenges your beliefs, that requires pause, that provokes productive discomfort? How often do you allow yourself the silence necessary to digest a thought instead of immediately reacting? The answer is not an accusation, but an invitation to awareness, because only what is first seen can be transformed, and you only see what you are willing to face. The first step toward wisdom is the perception of one's own ignorance, not as guilt, but as a starting point. The price of ignoring wisdom is high, and it is not only intellectual, it is emotional, spiritual, social. When a people abandons the search for meaning, it becomes vulnerable to manipulation, radicalism, collective collapse. People who don't think react, and reacting without reflection is the basis of violence, polarization, and the inability to dialogue. We are experiencing not only a cultural crisis, but a collapse of meaning. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, said that when human beings cannot find deep meaning in their lives, they anesthetize themselves with pleasure. And that is what we see. A society obsessed with comfort, distraction, consumption. But behind that, a void that does not disappear, a pain that does not cease. Because pleasure without purpose is just escape. And wisdom is the bridge that connects pleasure to purpose. It shows us not only how to live, but why to live. But why does wisdom scare us? Because it requires confrontation. Confrontation with the ego. Confrontation with the illusions we cultivate in order to survive. Confrontation with the discomfort of realizing that most certainties are fragile constructs. Seeking wisdom is choosing to look in the mirror without filters. It is asking who you are beyond the roles you play, beyond the appearance you maintain, beyond the opinions you repeat. Few have the courage to do this, and yet, you are here, reading, feeling. That means something. It means that, even amid the noise, there is a calling within you. A discomfort that cannot be satisfied with likes. A weariness that cannot be resolved with distraction. A thirst that consumption cannot quench. This is not weakness. It is the beginning of lucidity. It is a sign that something within you is alive and asking for depth. And what to do with that? First, regain your attention. What you feed your eyes and ears builds or destroys your mind. Protect your attention as if it were your freedom, because it is. Choose what you consume wisely. Read more than you scroll. Think more than you react. Reflect more than you speak. Wisdom is not born of noise. It flourishes in silence. Then question what is celebrated. Popularity is not a virtue. Fame is not synonymous with truth. Recognize false brilliance. Separate charisma from character. Learn to be wary of what is too easy. Wisdom requires discernment. Seek silence. It is sacred territory. That is where wisdom whispers. Sit down. Walk. Let boredom return. It is the threshold of insight. And finally, surround yourself with people and ideas that elevate you. Don't just surround yourself with voices that agree with you. Growth requires friction. And wisdom is not a solitary path. It is transmitted like a flame. From mind to mind, from soul to soul. There is still time. The collapse is not definitive. But reconstruction begins where few look, within yourself. Because that is where wisdom has always been, waiting for the right silence, the right moment, the minimum courage. Waiting for you. When a culture abandons wisdom, what takes its place is not emptiness. It is excess. An excess of distractions, noise, content that only fills time without ever touching the soul. The silence of wisdom has been replaced by the noise of urgency. And where there should be depth, there is only speed. No one has time to ask why. Just run, produce, consume, show. But what is lost in this rhythm is not just reflection, it is the very essence of being human. The soul, when not heard, becomes ill. But nature abhors a vacuum. And where there is no silence, there is stimulation. The time that should be for contemplation becomes time for distraction. The self, which was once an inner temple, becomes a showcase for trends. And this is not just a social problem. It is a spiritual collapse. Wisdom, by definition, is transcendent. It is not bound to the useful, the measurable, the immediate. It connects us to what is eternal in ephemeral experience. But we live in an age that despises anything that cannot be monetized. Try talking about the meaning of existence at a bar table. Try defending the beauty of silence at a corporate meeting. Watch how people react. They laugh. They scoff. They accuse you of being too deep, as if thinking were a defect, as if feeling were a weakness, as if diving in were a threat to the fluidity of appearances. This contempt for introspection did not arise by chance. It is cultivated. It has been systematically instilled in our institutions. Schools train for repetition, not discovery. Work demands results, not meaning. Social media rewards polarity, not nuance. And the most tragic thing is that we have become accustomed to this. We think it is normal to live without meaning, natural to always be busy, common to feel anxious. But none of this is natural. It is merely a symptom of a soul exiled from itself. And then the uncomfortable question arises: who benefits from this? Who profits when you stop thinking? When you trade consciousness for convenience? This is not a conspiracy theory. It is basic psychology. Distracted minds are submissive minds. Noisy souls do not hear the call of freedom, and that's why wisdom hasn't disappeared. It's been stifled, replaced by slogans, metrics, shortcuts. But it's still here, hidden, discreet, waiting for a crack in the chaos to flourish again. Epictetus said that only the educated are truly free. But what is education? It's not accumulating facts or memorizing formulas. It is learning to think for oneself, to doubt with clarity, to see with depth. But today, we confuse education with training. We teach what to think, not how to think. We clog the mind with opinions but leave the spirit hungry for perspective. And little by little, without realizing it, the soul unlearns how to seek. It forgets that there is something beyond the surface. This is the true death of wisdom, not when it is attacked, but when it is forgotten. Think about how many movies you have seen in recent years where the hero was someone wise. Not an arrogant genius nor a charismatic rebel, but someone truly lucid, humble, profound. Almost none. Because we no longer celebrate wisdom. We commercialize it. We turn virtue into marketing. Even authenticity has been reduced to a branding strategy. Meditation has become a productivity technique. Reading has become social capital. The sacred has been transformed into a service. And with that, we have lost the bridge that connected us to the invisible. But even so, there is something that resists. A silent hunger. A restlessness that arises after hours of useless scrolling. After empty nights. After goals achieved that bring no peace. Something that reminds us that the soul is still alive. Abraham Maslow called this self-actualization. The desire to become who we are. Not what society wants us to be, but what pulses at the core of our identity. And this is only possible through wisdom. Not the kind that shines on a diploma, but the kind that burns in doubt. The kind that is born of silence. The kind that teaches us that happiness without purpose is just anesthesia, and that no noise in the world can silence the truth that dwells in an awakened spirit. Wisdom is not a mystery reserved for monks. It is the forgotten essence of every culture that dared to look within. It is in the lines of the Bhagavad Gita, which states that the wise see unity between knowledge and action. It is in the verses of the Tao Te Ching, which teaches that knowing others is intelligence, but knowing oneself is true wisdom. It is also in the forgotten Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus declares, "If you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. If you do not bring it forth, it will destroy you." The message is clear. Wisdom is within. It always has been. But what prevents us from accessing it? Haste, ego, fear of being misunderstood. Seeking wisdom is, above all, an act of courage. Courage not to be understood. Courage to step away from the crowd. Courage to sit before a truth that offers neither comfort nor instant validation. Wisdom does not present itself with fireworks. It arrives as silence, as presence, as the discomfort of seeing yourself without layers. And that is why so few persist. Because living with wisdom requires constant death, the death of the false self. The one who wants to be accepted at any cost, who prefers to belong rather than be authentic, who molds themselves to their environment to avoid rejection. But wisdom does not allow masks. It requires that each layer of defense be removed, one by one, until only what is essential remains. And this encounter with the essential is both liberating and devastating, because it shows everything we were forced to hide in order to be loved. However, something changes profoundly when you begin to live from this center. A strength emerges. Not the strength of control, but the strength of clarity. The wise are not easily manipulated because they do not need approval. They are not easily distracted because they already know what matters. They are not easily seduced because they have already found what is real. And that is frightening, because the world does not know how to deal with those who do not bow to the logic of applause. But that is what we need now. People who see beyond the illusion, who do not compromise their integrity, who do not sell their attention to the highest bidder. People who think before they repeat, who listen before they react, who question, not out of arrogance but out of love for the truth. Because wisdom is not opinion, it is presence. And presence is the ability to be whole in the midst of chaos. Not to run away, not to pretend, just to be. Resurrecting wisdom in your life does not require diplomas or retreats. It requires honesty. Radiant, raw, non-negotiable honesty. With your habits, with your thoughts, with your choices. It is looking at everything you do automatically and asking, does this bring me closer to or further away from my essence? And from there, living more intentionally. Less for the desire to please, more for the courage to be real. This resurrection begins with everyday decisions. Instead of asking what you want right now, ask what really matters. Don't live just to satisfy immediate desires. Live to sustain what is true in the long run. Trade speed for direction. Trade quantity for depth. Trade the fear of being alone for the freedom to listen to yourself. It is a subtle but revolutionary movement. When this shift happens, everything changes. You stop trying to beat life and start living it. You stop looking for ready-made answers and start honoring the right questions. You see others not as rivals but as mirrors. You no longer seek to win debates, but to understand silences. And finally, you understand that existence is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be inhabited. Wisdom does not bring formulas, it brings lucidity. And living with lucidity is the greatest act of rebellion in a world that feeds on distraction. Because you will not only be thinking differently, you will be being different. You will be choosing carefully where to focus your attention, with whom to share your energy, what to allow to inhabit your mind. And this discernment is the basis of a more wholesome life, a life that may not shine in the eyes of the world, but which shines from within, where everything begins. Wisdom does not live in the extraordinary. It dwells in the simple. It is in the way you observe the world around you, in the patience with which you chew your food, in the silence you choose to cultivate before responding. It hides in the pauses, in the gaps between one obligation and another, and that is why it is so neglected. The modern world idolizes noise. It screams all the time, and those who do not scream are mistaken for those who have nothing to say. But wisdom does not impose itself. It insinuates itself, and it demands space. So simplify, not as a fad, but as a commitment. Reduce excess. Cleanse your mind of the invisible dirt that accumulates with every scroll of the screen. Protect your thoughts as you would protect a sacred temple, because what you consume becomes the raw material of your soul. And a soul built from informational garbage loses its ability to discern what is true. Read, but not for status. Read to remember who you are. Read to recover the thread that connects you to those who thought, felt, and sought before you. Read Marcus Aurelius and understand that your perception shapes your reality. Read Thich Nhat Hanh and learn to breathe through pain. Read Jung and face your shadow without fear. Read Rumi, Weil, Watts, Krishnamurti. Not to repeat what they said, but to remember what you already knew and had forgotten. And then, practice the most difficult thing, solitude. But not the solitude of abandonment. Sacred solitude. Walk without your cell phone. Sit without rushing. Be bored. Because boredom is the gateway to self-knowledge. The big answers don't come amid distractions, but in the company of emptiness. It is in this territory that the real questions appear, and in them lies the map of your transformation. Observe yourself. Without judgment. Just observe. How do you treat those who can offer you nothing? What do you pursue when no one is looking? Do your actions reveal your values or just your desire for validation? Do you live in creation mode or consumption mode? And when something bothers you, do you run away or learn? These answers don't fit into ready-made phrases, but each one opens doors that once crossed change everything. Surrounding yourself with people who challenge you is not a luxury, it is a necessity. An environment where there is only agreement is mental captivity. Growth requires confrontation, not the confrontation of aggression, but the confrontation of truth. Someone who tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Someone who makes you think, not just repeat. Because wisdom is not a monologue. It is a torch passed from soul to soul. And finally, slow down. Living wisely is not about stopping. It is about moving with intention. Reducing the noise until you can hear what has always been there. The sound of your own breathing. The hidden tone in the voice of a loved one. The spark of an idea that comes unbidden. Because wisdom lies in the details, and details can only be seen with calm eyes. Our ancestors knew this. The mystics, the philosophers, the wanderers of the soul. All of them, in different languages, said the same thing. Seeing clearly is more important than knowing a lot. And that clarity only comes when the heart is open, the mind is quiet, and the soul is listening. So let us remember, that fame is not synonymous with truth. That noise is not proof of reason. That being entertained is not the same as being awake. Wisdom has been forgotten because we have chosen to forget. But everything that has been forgotten can be remembered. Not with speeches, but with decisions. Small ones, daily ones, profound ones. And remember, stupidity is not just out there. It lives in every lazy choice, in every desire to avoid discomfort, in every moment we choose comfort over conscience. The real battle begins there, not in public debates, but in small private decisions. Will I scroll or reflect? Will I repeat or reframe? Will I hide or reveal? Now that you've come this far, make a choice. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is more than a click. It's a stance. A simple gesture that sustains a rare space in this world. The space of living thought. And if this content has touched you, consider supporting it with any amount. Every gesture of support keeps this flame burning, still resisting the darkness. Write in the comments, unshakable consciousness. Write it as a silent commitment, like someone lighting a candle in the midst of noise, because wisdom doesn't have to be loud, but it does need to be embraced.